So I'm 12 years into ministry and about 15 into working for churches now. I've been a transitional minister for most of my career, which means doing interim or contract work on 1 or 2 year contracts mostly. A lot of that has been my choice because I like that kind of work, but a lot of it's also been because that's worked for my family at a given point or time. So as I said earlier, I'm here on a 1 year contract, but we'll figure out whether a longer stay is the right way to go in the coming months. I'm not worried about that today, certainly. But I just wanted to say all of that to point out that starting here, though the community and the place is unfamiliar to me, this experience does feel familiar because I've done this a bunch of times. I was thinking particularly recently of 4 years ago when I started an interim ministry at Mount Vernon Unitarian Church in Northern Virginia. They have an extremely long, like quarter-mile driveway up to their campus. And along it, there are 3 signs that say, respectively, enter, rejoice, and come in. Even if you didn't know that before today, you might recognize those words from the hymn we sang earlier. And before I saw those signs, I had never thought about making that so tangible, right? It's a little abstract even when you sing it, but when it's on a sign, it feels very, very real. What a way to welcome everyone who comes to their campus. All right. That was the introduction. Now I'm going to switch gears a little bit. When I was 18, I moved off to live on my own for the first time in my life. In fact, the first time I'd ever really spent more than a few weeks away from my parents, or a few weeks away from the house I grew up and spent my entire first 18 years in, on Moffra Street in Old West Austin in Texas. I was so excited. I literally didn't stop smiling for the entire 3-hour drive down to Houston, where I was about to begin my first year at the University of Houston. It was August, of course. I had the windows down, though, because the AC didn't work in my vehicle. It was over 100 degrees. It was awful, actually, that part of it. But I was driving 65 on my way to do a whole new thing. I was also nervous and scared, of course. Lots of things, many complex emotions. I used Walt Whitman in a service recently and thought of that famous line from him, "I contain multitudes." Of course, there was excitement and trepidation at leaving all I had known, but it was also about what I was going towards, the new, the scary, the reality of potential. And I think this is a universal experience. Maybe not college for everyone, maybe you weren't 18, but at some point in our lives, we leave familiar surroundings for something new. It may even have been that the world changed around you. But however it happened, you suddenly find yourself in a new, perhaps challenging, certainly unfamiliar place in life. Indeed, I think all of us have found ourselves in some version of this in recent years, as a pandemic has changed our world in sweeping ways. I mean, the world changed around us. Something of the proportions, the pandemic of proportions we haven't seen in more than a century, changed the ways we work and the ways we shop, how we interact with one another. It involved losses to our family and friends. It changed our economy, our daily routines, our relationships, so much more. A lot of those changes are bad, of course. Deaths, illnesses, lost jobs, missed time together, so many other things. But I do like to lift up that a few changes have been good, or at the very least neutral. Working from home for so many people can be a good thing. In my house, we've spent more time together with those in our household. Though I have to say, especially during the lockdowns, it was a lot of time with family. And I had not only my 3 boys, but also 2 nephews living with us at that moment, so it was a lot. But I'll say one particular thing, one of the best things to come out of the pandemic for me was reconnecting with some college friends. This group of 4 of us Zoomed a handful of times, especially during the height of the pandemic. And we've continued more in a group text these days, but connecting in ways we hadn't in almost 2 decades. And this, of course, despite the fact that we're in 2 different states, Texas and Maryland, and another of us is in Korea, actually, South Korea. I love to share this little anecdote. One night, we all shared food that we had been preparing in our fridges because we are of a certain age and have entered the pickling and fermentation stage of life. All of us had some form of cabbage prepping. Kimchi for my friend in Korea, actually, and one of the friends in Texas for that matter. Sauerkraut, and I was making curtido because we were going to have pupusas the next day. Anyway, that's a little bit of a digression, but it was really wonderful to see all of these friends again. And it's a little sad that it took a pandemic for us to make it happen. But I think even now we're left feeling like we need to find some new normal, a new feeling of home. Not what we left behind in March 2020, I don't think. It's weird to me, as I wrote this, I was thinking that's 5 years ago, which feels like both a long time and not very long at all. But a new sense of who we are and what our lives are. And maybe that involves some intentional change. There are people out there right now thinking about making their first visit to this congregation, whether online or in person. We, of course, have many people already make their first visits here from the comfort of their own homes on our streaming or in communities both near and far. We've been challenged to rethink what it means to be a UU community. Not a building or a specific place, or not just those things anyway, but an interconnected group that goes beyond just being in the same room and can encompass people from all over the world. So in this, my first sermon here, there's a great temptation to say everything, right? I now have enough experience with more than a decade in ministry to know is a terrible idea. I'll get to the other things in future sermons. It's a daunting prospect to give a first sermon to a new congregation, even though I have done it a few times now. How do I introduce myself to you and say something meaningful and set the tone for our ministry? And as I said earlier, it's a little weird to sort of welcome myself. As a transitional minister, I've given these every couple of years, but it doesn't get a whole lot easier. But I do think of something one of my mentors in ministry, the Reverend John Burens, who was president of the Unitarian Universalist Association from 1993 to 2001. He told me once that he liked to turn this idea on its head, that it's not the pastor's, the new minister's job to welcome themselves there, but it's this community's job to welcome me. And similarly, it is our calling to welcome newcomers into our community, not to sort of wait for them to welcome themselves in. It's our job to engage them in what we do and who we are. It's our job to invite them to bring the gifts and perspective they have in order to change us, not to fit in with who we already are. It's a good reminder to me that it's not my job as a newcomer to welcome myself, even as the minister. I'm supposed to be welcomed. And rest assured, you're doing fine on that front. I'm not complaining. I was on a long-planned vacation last week, so we're still getting a little bit up to speed, but we'll figure everything out in the coming weeks, where the copier paper is stored and all those important details. And we've had many emails and Zooms and in-person meetings these last few months to get things to this point, I assure you. My first visit here a few months ago to meet with your search committee and to tour this building, I noticed what many of you have also. I noticed that we're here in a very special place, a community like no other on earth, a place that has history, but also a future and a present. And again, I thought of that first time I went to Mount Vernon and saw those signs, enter, rejoice, and come in. I think of that now every time I go to a new place, a new UU community, because those simple words contain so much of what we strive to do, to enter into community, to rejoice, but indeed to feel all the feelings, good and bad, and hold them with one another, and come in, really come in. Not just dip a toe in the water in. This is a community that invites your whole self. And that can take a while, that's fine. Most people do that. They may come cautiously, but sooner or later you have to jump all the way in. And it's our job to help them do that. Maybe provide some floaties or someone to catch them in the water. Enter, rejoice, and come in, friends. It's central to our congregations to help people find a sense of community, a sense of home, a sense of belonging. We welcome people into this special community. We want them to come and want them to join what we are doing and bring their whole selves to fully be a part of us. It is a core tenet of our faith, of our religious tradition, and of this congregation to be welcoming. And I mean that in every sense. We are a welcoming congregation, the name of the Unitarian Universalist Association program, which congregations do, in order to make sure we are friendly to people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. We also have to be accessible of people who are differently abled, which is something I think we could do a little bit better on here, and something I know we'll talk about. We want to be a place where people feel like they belong, and we're committed to doing the work it takes to do that. To be welcoming, inclusive, friendly, this is Unitarian Universalism. Or the beginning of it, at least. In coming weeks and months, we'll explore more of what it means to be a UU community, especially this UU community in this time and place, how each of us fits in that. We'll talk about who we are and who we want to be as the UUs of Gettysburg. So friends, once again, enter, rejoice, and come in, and welcome the next folks to come in too. May we invite them into what we are doing and welcome what they bring into who we are. More than ever, our world needs the power of welcoming community, the power that brings people together to make a better world for us and all who come after us. May it be so.